What's going down, people? What's going down? Good to be back with y'all. I know it's been about a week or so. This is going to be the Plan B with Mr. Elk Spaghetti. First aid, trauma, I got a boo-boo section. So I got a couple more videos left in the series here, but we're going to get into what you should have, where you should have it, and how you should be trained to use it. So you guys have heard me talk about it before. This is my kit. This is an IFAK, and we'll get into what an IFAK is here in a little bit. You know what, we'll get into IFAK first. IFAK is an individualized first aid kit. And this one is a little specialized because it's got stuff that normally someone that's just first aid trained would not possess. So scissors, dual needles for pneumothoracic chest needling, so you're not dealing with collapsed lungs and stuff like that. Rolled bandages, combat gauze, chest seals. There is one, if I'm drawing a blank this morning, there's one tourniquet here, and I've got more in the bag. Like I tell y'all, I carry at least 4, but the lower pouch has an additional set of gloves, some medical tape, but the different chest seals that are available, I'm going to put this down because this bad boy is heavy, and we'll get into some of the contents in there. So when you're carrying a first aid kit, or an IFAK, everyone should have at least an IFAK. And when I say have it, if you're gonna go camping, IFAK needs to be in your pack. If you're gonna go hiking, IFAK needs to be in your pack. If you're driving to and from work, the IFAK needs to be in the vehicle that you're driving within arm's reach of the person that's trained to use it. Not in your trunk, not shoved into some little fucking super secret compartment in the back so where you know you got it, but because worst case scenario, you get into a car wreck and you have to apply immediate care to yourself that could be life-saving, you're gonna want that IFAK within reach. Lots and lots of traffic collisions every year that result in a fatality could be prevented by an individual that knows how to provide basic self-care before emergency services get there, whether it be law enforcement, fire, paramedics. So with that being said, there's some rules you have to look at following. Obviously, if you're up, you're awake, you're conscious, you're not worrying about airway. Your airway's open, you're breathing, you're talking, you're communicating. You're breathing just fine. So now you're gonna wanna worry about blood loss so that you don't stop breathing. Blood loss, any kind of major injuries, you're gonna have to do that self-examination. Like, where does it hurt? Run your hands over it. Do you have blood there? What kind of blood is it? Is it a lighter blood? Is it a darker blood? The flow, the amount, so on and so forth. If it's on any of the limbs, from the hip to the toes, or from the shoulder to the wrists, tourniquets applied for heavy blood loss. Good rule of thumb, stop the bleed. Anything on the thoracic cavity, from the pelvis to the throat, you got any kind of holes, anything protruding, any kind of impalement, you're going to want to seal the holes in the thoracic cavity using a chest seal. Should you not have a chest seal, just a piece of plastic to seal that. What you want to do is, as you breathe, you don't want your body sucking air into that cavity because the air has no way to escape, and now you're putting air pressure on the outsides of your lungs, which is going to collapse your lungs, and that's how you run into issues with collapsed lungs. You can't breathe, and then ultimately you die from it. So if you can get a seal on that, whether it's a piece of plastic, a latex glove, a grocery bag, something you have in reach of you, or a chest seal. It's gonna suck for some of the dudes that, they look like gorillas because you got hair. You're gonna want to get a good chest seal. If it's a gunshot wound, you're gonna want to get entry and exit. Sometimes that's not feasible if you are working self-care, but neither here nor there. You want to seal the air from being able to enter the body through an alternative method other than your nose and mouth. That's what we have needling for if the air does get into there, or you're having issues where you start seeing the body is normally the chest. If one side starts getting bigger than the other, you're going to have issues with air pressure building up inside the cavity, and it's imperative that you get to a hospital as soon as possible so that pressure can be relieved. It is life-threatening. You can die from it. So chest seals, this one's still sealed in the package. I try to keep all my shit sealed up. I do not have my instructor's kit with me. If I had my instructor's kit with me, I would pull out a chest seal so you guys can see what it looks like. But basically, it's a piece of plastic that's reinforced with an adhesive. Typically, they're not, I shouldn't say plastic. Plastic is a very general term. There's different kinds of materials that they're made of. They're all basically a plastic, but a lot of them don't have a memory. So when they're folded up in these tiny little packages and you open them up, they don't retain a memory, so you don't have all these fold lines and creases when you're trying to seal them down. So ideally, when you're applying these, you're going to want to get as much blood off the area as you can, as dry as you can with some direct pressure to be able to seal that wound up as quickly as possible. Now, if you do have holes that aren't in the thoracic cavity would be anywhere where you've got your vital organs, your lungs, so on and so forth. This, basically your 10 ring, you're going to want to use a combat gauze. Combat gauze, this one's sealed. This has a hemostatic quality to it, which means it's going to help to slow or stop blood loss. If it's in this cavity, it's going to be very hard to stuff a wound in this cavity with combat gauze. That's why you seal them up, because if you take a roll of gauze like this and you just keep stuffing a wound and it's in the thoracic cavity, you're pushing all of this into that chest and abdominal cavity, and medical staff is going to have to deal with that at some point in time, and it's not helping your cause. You're not going to stop the blood flow or loss, and all you're doing is putting something into that cavity that's going to have to be mitigated later point in time. This is this. So they compress down rather nicely. Stuffing a wound anywhere other than thoracic cavity, say you got upper shoulders, arms, legs, so on and so forth, you're stopping the bleed. You applied the tourniquet, you're stopping the bleed, you're going to stuff the wound with however much this takes to get a good hemostatic seal on it. Then you're going to apply a pressure bandage to the top of it, and then you're going to wrap it with gauze wrap, pressure wrap, anything, combat bandage, just to keep that in place so that they can get, where you can get to a hospital with advanced medical care. That's stopping the bleed. You got the tourniquet on, now you've addressed the wound. If something is impaled in the body, please, please, please do not remove anything that's a foreign object that's impaled in the body. Immobilize it in place, wrap it, gauze around it, stabilize it, and then get ready for either you to be transported, either self or family, or emergency medical services to transport you. But the more that you can do to stop that blood flow, that blood loss, stopping the bleed, is going to prevent a lot of needless fatalities when it comes to car accidents or household injuries or accidents. But with your IFAK, you got to always make sure you got shears, because a lot of times you're going to end up cutting clothing off. These shears will cut through a lot more than just clothing. I've seen them cut through coins, zippers, boots, shoes, so on and so forth. A lot of times, especially when it comes to foot or ankle injuries, you don't have the option to be able to remove a shoe. So you're going to cut laces first, and then maybe you might be able to get it off. You may have to cut all the way down the side and around. But be prepared to address all those injuries. When you guys are evaluating yourself or others for injuries and doing a blood loss, you got respirations, breathing, airway, they're conscious, but yeah, you know, now you're looking for blood loss, go over the entire body, head to toe, get an inspection on it, get a hand in that area. I don't care how uncomfortable it makes you feel. You do not want to miss an area where you have blood flow and think you're good and lose a patient that way. So a lot of times it's good to cut the clothes off to the affected area, do a complete visual inspection, a complete touch inspection Use like a powder blue glove or a white glove. Do not use latex, use nitro. A lot of people are allergic to latex. Also, replace your nitro gloves quite frequently. The heat and storage will destroy those bad boys. But use the light colored gloves so that when you do your physical inspection of someone, you'll know if you have that OPIM on your gloves. It's the other potentially infectious material, blood, or you're going to run into vomit, you're going to run into excrement. I had to think about a nice way to say that. Weird things happen when people are in a traumatic incident, whether it be a car accident, a gunfight. So you have to be prepared for those fluids, and you definitely don't want to have an exposure for yourself, because a lot of people, you know, they end up with wounds and shit on their hands and other places where if you end up dealing with an incident like that, you're going to have other people's fluids come in contact with you, and then definitely you can end up catching some ethyl bad stuff from someone else, some shit you definitely don't want to take home. Also, as part of my kit and yours, you should all be trained on and carry a CPR mask, whether it's a face shield or a full-size mask. With this mask, the reason that I carry this mask instead of a micro shield, because micro shields are much smaller, and it's because I have the availability of an ambu bag. I don't have to sit down there and physically blow when we're doing breathing and respirations. I have it's a big bag, big bubble. A lot of the vendors teaching CPR first aid are telling first responders now that breaths are not required for CPR, because chest compressions will bring a sufficient amount of air in and out of the body to maintain life. But what I will recommend is that you guys go and hit up your local Red Cross, American Heart Saver, or any of the other organizations that offer first aid and CPR. Get certified. Stay certified. Do the recertifications. And for those of y'all that have experience in this area, get an instructor certification. There's no reason not to. That way you can teach your entire family in your homes. You can teach all your friends. The more people that know how to maintain and prolong someone's life when they're suffering from a catastrophic, traumatic, or dangerous event in life, I got to be real careful how I word things, the better off we're going to be. The more people are going to survive these incidents, because being the fact that you have tools and that you have skill and a skill set in one area means that you must have skills, training, and a skill set in other areas. It completes the totality of your availability and ability to respond appropriately in all areas. Hopefully that makes sense without sending off little alarms in other places. Should you need to use any kind of force and injury occurs, you have to be ready to provide first aid, medical care, life-saving care until either equally trained individuals or higher trained individuals arrive and take over. So it's an excellent course to have. I'm a CPR first aid instructor for regular people out in the real world, and then I am a CPR first aid, AED, and traumatic incident instructor, traumatic casualty care instructor for first responders as well. Something that I have maintained throughout my entire career. I used to have a EMT cert. I was well on my way to getting a medic cert, but for those of y'all that have been down that road, it's a lot of training. It's a lot of school, working the way that I was. I wish I would have completed it, but I did not. Maybe something down the road just for shits and giggles after I retire. But typically people that get that shit, they come out of retirement because they want to use that cool training that they got to help people, help save lives. Most of us that are involved in public service, whether it be fire, paramedics, law enforcement, or otherwise, we entered this career field to affect people for good, to save people's lives. So, with that being said, this pack is relatively large. I do keep this right next to my legs. It's in my passenger seat, right down there on the floorboard. I've got a top strap on it. It goes right around the fucking gear shifter. There's a purpose to that, and it's because if I become involved in a collision, I don't want that bitch flying around the car where I cannot reach it. So figure out a system that works for you, whether you guys use some kind of Velcro strapping. You want to have it close enough to reach should something happen to you. And like I tell everyone, you have 4 limbs, carry 4, where the fuck did that go? You got 4 limbs, make sure you carry, this is a cat tourniquet. There's a bunch of different designs to it, but you want it set up and ready to go. So I always have enough for each one of my limbs. God forbid I ever need it for myself, but I have it in case I need it for others as well. I have a second set of shears. Always have backups for those of y'all that are first responders, you know, that when seconds count, your gear is going to fail. So Mr. Murphy is always prevalent, whether it be fire, EMS, or law enforcement. So we always prepare for Mr. Murphy. Mr. Murphy is Murphy's Law. And that means the absolute worst fucking thing on the planet will happen to you when you least expect it and you're not ready for it. So if you guys plan, equip, and train, you're going to be more successful when it comes to saving your life, the life of your loved ones, or the life of people you may come into contact to or contact with. Remember, when you see those collisions out on the roadway, it doesn't take but maybe 90 seconds to stop. Make sure everyone's okay. Make sure you're placing your vehicle in a safe position. You're not jeopardizing your life or the life of your family in the car. Check and see if everyone's okay, who's contacted emergency services. If anybody needs immediate medical care, which means they're not breathing, there's heavy blood loss, then do not think about it. Hey, I'm trained. Can I help you? Get permission. Fucking go to work. Because when I roll up on scene uniform, if you've already started that work, I'm going to jump right in there and get my hands dirty with you. Not everyone is born to be a hero. Some of us have to be compelled into it. But in the end, if you guys have a pure heart and you're out to looking to do good, good's going to find you. Because remember this, you're not always going to be with your family. And if something bad happens to your family when you're not around, you hope and pray that someone that's trained and has a heart to serve steps up to help your family when they need it most. So without further ado, I love you guys, and I will see y'all next time. It's Joe Spaghetti signing off.